You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis. Welcome to the show, Mish.
Hey, a pleasure to be back on. Some wild, unexpected things. Central banks are surprising in Switzerland, in Canada, and on the ECB today. Pretty interesting, actually.
60 billion euro quantitative easing sounds like a lot, is it?
It's the equivalent of it's enough to buy almost every German bond for the rest of the year. So yeah, it's significant. And what shrinking yields from 0.25% down to zero is supposed to do certainly bewilders me. They think it's going to spur lending, but if it was a matter of cash, banks are sitting on it. There's piles of excess reserves sitting at the Fed, and there's similar piles of excess reserves sitting with the ECB. So it's not as if creating more excess reserves is going to spur any lending. So what it is going to do is misprice government sovereign bonds even more than they already have. And I think of significance here is the fact that starting in November, we've seen something happen we have not seen for a while, and that is gold is rising in in U.S. dollar terms. It's rising in the euro terms. Gold is rising almost in every currency. In fact, I do believe in every major currency, and I'm wondering if that is a sign that things are about to become unglued, or at the very minimum, people are having to have some doubts about central banks being able to do what they say they do.
Mish, you've been writing about Canada, and that always makes me nervous. What have you been telling us? Well,
yesterday, and this one was a shock, Canada came out and cut interest rates. Unexpected move, and we saw some announcements here in the United States, but no one actually went out there, at least that I'm aware of in the United States. No mainstream media or bloggers here did. I said, let's go out there and take a look at the Canadian yield curve. Lo and behold, short-term interest rates on one-month government bonds in Canada actually had a higher yield than one-year rates, than two-year rates, and three-year rates. And one-year rates had higher yields than 2- and 3-year rates, and I think 2-year had higher than 3. So the entire Canadian yield curve from 1 month to 3 years inverted yesterday, or following the Canadian Central Bank announcement. Typically, when the yield curve inverts, that's a sign of a recession, and certainly we're going to see. I would suspect that areas of Canada are already in recession, mainly the areas around the tar and oil sands production. These things aren't profitable, and it's going to spill over. And one wonders if this is finally the start of the Canadian housing bust. Someone was just telling me today, actually Chris Martinson was telling me today that in Calgary that homes for sale is up 60%, and they're just sitting. Prices haven't crashed yet; they're just slowly coming down. And I do think Canada's heading for a recession here. So if you're trying to sell in Canada, my advice would be to undercut all the sellers and sell now. Of course, I've been wrong about the Canadian housing bubble bursting several times before, but with Canada heading into a recession, this one seems the most likely yet.
And yet, with a cut in interest rates, that means mortgages will be even cheaper. Will some people be tempted to buy now, hoping that it doesn't bust?
Well, that was one of the comments I heard from in a Canadian article. Unfortunately, I don't remember the publication, but it was along the lines of "Back in the Saddle Again." I don't know if you know that song, but no, I don't think so. If recession hits, and I think it's going to, and in fact, I think it's going to spill over into the U.S. The U.S. is not going to defy the global economy. China is slowing. That's what's impacting Australia and Canada. Europe is slowing. I don't think this ECB announcement today is going to stall that. Germany is going to go into recession. The U.S. is supposedly the global growth beacon. The IMF raised its estimate for the U.S. on the basis of that the price of oil was sinking, and lowered Europe on the basis that oil was sinking, and also raised Europe because of the euro was sinking, but did not lower the U.S. because the dollar is rising. All of this stuff is so inconsistent. These people just say whatever they want. Even the central bankers are making all of this stuff up as they go. And it was just a couple of weeks before the Swiss National Bank surprised everyone with unleashing the peg, that it promised to defend the peg with all vigor. And now the Danish central bank is saying the same thing. They've still got the peg on. So, we'll see about that. But anyway, the rise in gold corresponds with increasing disbelief in what central bankers say. And why should anyone believe them? They've been wrong about everything. They've been wrong about growth. They were wrong about the housing bust in the U.S. They've been wrong about everything for years. So it's amazing that anyone would believe them in the first place.
I've been told that the banks are horribly exposed due to their oil derivatives. Does that mean if they start to go under, they'll start dipping into your bank account like they did in Cyprus?
No. I don't think they can dip into your bank account here. People are telling me they're seeing stories, and I keep asking for links, and no one ever sends me a link. So these are all rumors. But do the banks have a lot of loans to the oil sector that might not get paid back? Probably do. The corporate bond market in general, though, a lot of it is simply private. But these things start in one place and spread in another. And we've already seen junk bonds of the oil producers get smashed. With the Swiss franc move, we had a brokerage firm, FXCM, nearly went under. Its stock price fell 90% in the wake of that move. We saw an $800 million hedge fund go completely bust. We saw another $800 million hedge fund lose that amount in that portfolio of his, even though he's got other amounts in other strategies. So we're seeing a lot of fallout. We're seeing an increase in volatility. We saw the Shanghai stock market drop 7.5% in overnight, one day, related to Chinese housing and the Chinese shadow economy. It's been drifting back up since then, but all of these things here just portend that we are, on the cusp of some kind of major move, and that major move, I don't believe, is going to be up.
We'll have more with Mish Shedlock right after this.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
Welcome back. We're speaking to Mish Shedlock. Mish, The U.S. State of the Union address was just a few days ago. What is the real State of the Union?
The real State of the Union. I think things are they've improved about as much as they can improve, and it's actually in spite of, not because of things that were done. But Obama came out with an announcement, and he said that it would be practical and, good grief, what was the other word? But it was, and nonpartisan. It was impractical and certainly partisan. He wants tax hikes on the wealthy. He wants free education, as if, it's not really free. Someone's got to pay for it, right? Taxpayers? So, he wants more carbon taxes. So, I look at his three major proposals and say, none of these are practical. Carbon taxes are inane. Free school is ridiculous. And the whole program was ridiculous. And he called it nonpartisan. So I called it two lies, because it's not practical and it was partisan. So, but what he says is pretty much irrelevant, or what he wants. And he says the believable part of his statement was that he was going to stump the country, telling people how great his plan was. Well, I believe he's going to stump the country telling people how great his plan is, but his plan is dead on arrival in Congress. So, that's pretty much the end of it. And I think we're at the end here of what QE can do globally. I don't believe it worked here in the United States. I believe things improved despite that. Certainly, financial assets were elevated. Bond prices, stock market, everything, pretty much went up, but gold. And, where to from here? They want to get still more leverage out of creating an even bigger bubble in the stock market. I really don't got it. I just like to sit in on one of those meetings one time and express my opinions and see if these guys really believe the jackass things they're saying. My guess is they probably do, and my guess is they've probably not heard anyone, bluntly talk to them in terms like I'm talking to you right now and saying, what needs to be said. I mean, these guys truly don't get it. And, but, they don't want my opinion, and they don't want yours, and they don't want anybody's opinion. And Obama and governments in general, they can say, we're going to start this website and phone in with your idea. They don't want your opinions. They're going to do whatever it is they want to do. And, most of it is wrong. At least in the U.S., we've got the fortunate situation where, nothing's going to change for until the next election. And then we see whether it's for the better or the worse. And it's going to depend on whether or not Rand Paul gets in there, who's going to make some changes, or, if it's Hillary versus Mitt Romney, the country loses either way. They're both going to do the same thing. So, that's the sad scenario that we face here. But the time to deleverage, my congratulations, because I've been wrong. I never thought asset prices would get so distorted as they have. But so congratulations to anyone out there that loaded the boat, with assets over the last 2 years and just sat on them. But look at what's happening. Look at the recent rally in gold. Look at the increased volatility across the board in stock markets, in oil, in China, in Europe, in Switzerland, and, just ask yourself if you want to be a part of that. And I would suggest no, and that's really my message of the day.
Mish, you also mentioned in your newsletter, in 5 years, when perhaps the price of oil starts to go up again in North America, by then they're going to have robot bulldozers and drones doing construction. So where will these people get jobs in the oil patch?
Well, it's not just the oil patch. We've already seen mechanized robots in Rio Tinto mines and now, and these places are far away from where people travel and stuff. But my post, what I was talking about was actually in Japan for construction of houses. They've got a drone flying in the air, this miniature little helicopter that's sending 3D signals down to a bulldozer that goes out and excavates the site and perhaps something else that even pours the foundation. That's what we're talking about here. So it's just another segment of the economy that's going to be where jobs are going to be lost. And I've been thinking about Uber lately. This is this, taxi service that governments, across the world are trying to ban and get rid of, and all kinds of protests in France and Germany everywhere. And they're saying, well, these drivers aren't licensed, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there thinking, what do we even need drivers for? Why don't we just take these taxis, give someone a code that they enter when their taxi comes up, and the door opens and the vehicle drives by itself. I mean, Google has self-autonomous cars. People aren't going to want to stop driving. However, it makes a lot of sense for, taxi drivers. You feed it your address. It's got a communication link that you can talk with someone, in case the cab gets lost or disabled or something happens to it. The thing would probably be safer than most cab drivers drive. And so all kinds of automations like this. And this is what central banks are fighting. They are trying to fight deflation, which is the natural state of affairs, rising productivity. All these technological advancements speak for falling prices. And they want 2% inflation in a falling inflation world because of technology. Now, they've managed to do it so far, except in places where government has least interfered. If you look at the prices that have gone up the most in the United States, that's education and that's healthcare. If you look at where prices have gone up the least, it's technology. It's advancing so fast the government can't keep up with it. So it's not that these clowns wouldn't try and regulate it and make prices go up, but they just haven't figured out a way to do it yet. I don't know, maybe they implement Krugman's idea here of taxing robots, but, just think for a second what that would do. I mean, and Krugman actually proposed taxing robots so that they couldn't replace real workers. Well, you've got people clamoring to make $15 an hour at McDonald's. Most of these are, high school kids or people that have long retired and are just, looking for something to do, a little bit of extra income. People want $15 an hour at McDonald's. For doing what? For just standing there? And so these jobs are being replaced. McDonald's has new kiosks where you just go in and place your order. You don't even, no one's there standing to take the order. Or maybe they need fewer people there standing to take the order. You just punch it in. So want it your way? Punch that in too. So all of these, every increase in minimum wage and every lowering of the interest rate below artificial levels of where it would be, actually, in the long run, is going to cost jobs, because each of those, in turn, provides an incentive for corporations to act. A rise in the minimum wage makes it more likely, and a rise in health care benefits both makes it more likely that companies are not going to want to take on or hire. And a decline in interest rates, which central banks do because they think it's going to lend, makes corporations want to go out and borrow money. Borrow money to do what? Borrow money to buy equipment, both hardware and software, to get rid of workers. And that's where it's going, and they don't even see it. And they also don't see that all of the talk about income inequality, about CEO pay. Why is CEO pay high? Why do we have income inequality? Well, for one thing, it's the natural state of affairs. Assuming that a farm worker and the CEO of Google should, make the same wage is ludicrous. But the other thing is, when you look at just share prices. A lot of these CEOs get paid on the basis of how well the company did. Well, the company did great. Why did the company do great? And why are these CEOs getting bonuses? Well, they're getting bonuses because the Fed lowered the interest rate, inflated the values of stocks, the CEO pay goes up, and then, central banks are blaming it, on the banks, on the CEOs. They're blaming it on McDonald's, for not sharing the wages. They're blaming it on everyone but themselves. And that's the state of affairs that we're in. And meanwhile, the bubble just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to burst.
Any bright spots to avoid all this?
Well, the bright spot to avoid it is if you've done well in the stock market over the last few years, take some money out, actually take it all out, put it on the sidelines, put 20% of it on gold, and just, if you've got a job, be thankful, and have savings in cash for 1 year's salary in case you or your spouse or significant other loses their job. Make sure you can pay the bills in cash, not in stocks, not in gold, not anything else, but in actual cash, to pay the bills for a year if you lose your job. So that's the bright spot. For people who can do that, I would call that a bright spot. But right now, we've got people that couldn't even afford without borrowing. Should a tire on their car go out? That's how stretched people are. Living from paycheck to paycheck still. Most of the population doesn't have even 1 month's worth of living expenses where they wouldn't have to borrow, let alone a year. But the bright spot for those that do is they should take advantage of it. Pull some money out of the stock market, put some money in gold, wait for better opportunities. Better opportunities coming down the road, in my opinion.
Thanks a lot for chatting with us.
Pleasure to be on the show, and do a Google search for Mish to find me.
My guest has been Mish Shedlock, editor of Mish's Global Economic Trend Analysis. You're listening to TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Check out our popular YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Comments about the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.